Hi, Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report. Getting ready for Christmas Day, but first, Celtics have an early one with the Clippers on Saturday. Seeing both these LA teams that have gone in two very different directions lately. Clippers coming off a long win streak that ended against the Thunder, and Law's back in LA, getting us ready for Clippers. Celtics, welcome back, Law. Always enjoy talking Celtics, Clippers with you. And another different looking Clippers team than the one we saw when we talked about this a year ago. James Harden in. They go on a run here after a rocky start. Russell Westbrook to the bench. And now, I think if Jason Tatum plays, we're going to see maybe the two best starting lineups in the NBA going against each other here in terms of net rating, with the Celtics group probably the best overall so far, and the Clippers the best lately. So what's led to this turnaround? How has it all kind of figured itself out in recent weeks?
Basketball, man. I think it helps when guys play. Guys needed to play, and guys needed to understand what their roles were within each other's individual skill sets. And I think there were positive glimpses over the course of the 6 game losing streak that the team went on, but they had a winning problem. Simple as that. Like, they weren't closing games with wins, either because there were lineups on the floor that completely blew up whatever progress they were making, or they would get to clutch time and they would drop the ball there. So I think that obviously Russ going to the bench helped streamline a lot of things. It's not the only thing. They balanced the roster, and then naturally, someone like James Harden. I think James came into this season in good physical condition, but basketball shape requires you to play basketball. It requires you to have the familiarity of what teams are trying to do to you, and when you change teams, that process is a little bit steeper because you're not just trying to, play within yourself and your understanding of what your body and what your mind are doing, but then you got new guys that you're playing around. So I think that it was always there weren't going to be a team that as bad as a 6 game losing streak team, but this 9 game losing streak that just ended Thursday night. It was very encouraging to see because the 2-3 era has never seen this. Like, I was telling dudes Monday night, yo, you never won this many games since 2019 in a row, and that's exceptional. That winning streak is going to feed families, man.
We'll rattle it off. The competition's interesting. Warriors to start off, who haven't gone in a great direction lately. Nuggets are certainly impressive. Then Jazz, Blazers, Kings, who have been up and down this year. Warriors again. Knicks, who have been pretty good. Pacers, who have been great, and they dropped 150 on them. And then Mavericks, and then they lose to the Thunder. So, some decent teams mixed in there, but overall,
We're not going to schedule adjust the win streak, Bobby. I'll tell you, that's something that's not going to happen.
all right. So,
Come on, man.
have you been
They won games. They won games, man.
right? You play who you play. I'll accept it.
Damn
So,
right.
have you been surprised at all by how well the Harden things work so far? Because I do think around the league and just fans in general, there was a lot of skepticism about how this would come together.
No, I wrote about what was going to happen in June, July, August. Like, it's Tyronn Lue, man. T. Lue's going to make it work at some point, especially on the offensive end of the floor, like he always does. I'm not super surprised that it was nasty at the beginning because that would be me ignoring what happened with Russ. It's the same damn thing. They lost the first 5 games out the All Star break last year with Russell Westbrook. So then they turn around and it looked good. It's just that people never talk about that part because, Lou Dort crashing on Paul George's legs. So we never got to see the finished product in the playoff series. So that was unfortunate last season. And I mean, I'm not going to say I thought they'd lose 6 in a row straight off the bat. I'm not going to say I thought they'd win 9 in a row. But in general, as far as like James and everything, I wrote when they lost in Dallas, when they got smacked, I was hearing a lot of chatter about, the dynamics at work. And I said, those who need to make sure that they commit to staying together, staying together as a locker room, staying together and not having different agendas swallow the potential before you could even see the ball get rolling with some wins. Any win at that point, right? So and they went on and they lost like two more games before they won games. So um, that's the thing that I think has been a positive is yeah, these dudes are all from LA area and all came into the league around the same time, but how much was that going to be real versus how much was that going to be an organizational talking point? It's real now. Like guys, um, you know, they stuck together. They are enjoying each other. They've won, and even when they were losing games after the wins, like I remember the Nuggets game last Monday of November, they took that personal and they retightened and refocused. They lost last night, and James Harden is talking about how you know every team is going to give them a good shot. Um, every team is going to be hard for them to face, not just a team like the Boston Celtics coming in Saturday afternoon. And what you need to do when you're winning is some of the things that you do when you're losing, and that's communicate. It's point out the things that aren't working. And I do think that it matters that these guys are in their 30s, not in their 20s. Being in your 30s offers a different level of athletic maturity that comes with understanding what the bigger goal is and keeping your focus on those things. And so um, it's worked out, and a lot of the stakeholders in place ensure that it was going to work out as far as the head coach and the existing stars and what kind of player James is, especially this time of the year, the regular season.
Yeah, I was less surprised in the team making it work out and the coach making it work out than just seeing Harden have this much left in the tank here with the individual production he's put out, and especially the last handful of games here. He's up to over the last 10, 20, and 9.5. And we knew he could pass from the Philly days, but 9.5 to 2.5 turnovers is just ridiculous. The shooting's there, 45%. It's been surprising to me to see him reach that level again, and we'll see how it sustains itself over the course of the season here. But it's been impressive, and I'm curious too. You've been around Kawhi, you've been around George, but this wider group that's kind of formed here, stars, Harden coming in, Westbrook coming in. There's some parallels, I think, to what the Celtics have done here in terms of just bringing in multiple additional stars on top of the stars that they already have here and having to figure it out. Guys figuring out their roles in that dynamic and trying to figure out a team dynamic that works, with all these individual guys who are so used to being the guy in many circumstances. So, what's it just been like seeing these guys gel, as personalities, as people in the locker room, all the rest? Because that's kind of been in Boston. What's caught me the most this year is just how much everybody's been willing to sacrifice and work together to make what looked like a little bit of a complicated picture coming in work out.
Well, the benefit that the Celtics had that the Clippers didn't is training camp. Um, like I think that the Boston Celtics having all those guys together, knowing what team they were going to have, especially by media day, certainly
Yeah.
helped. Whereas we went to Hawaii and we had to deal with the cognitive dissonance of, a group of guys who were on the team that no one knows who's going to get traded. And you can't coach to expect a trade. You just got to coach who you have. You have to lead who you have as players, and you got to play hard as players. And that group was going to be good if they stayed together, but they didn't make the trade to be good. They made a trade to, as Lawrence Frank would say, raise a ceiling. And James being a ceiling raiser in that regard. So I think that when they were losing, I think the part of the team that needed to really figure it out was the role player level. Uh, Russ and Russ more or less is part of that group more than he is part of the star group. It's always going to be tougher when you're the point guard. It's always going to be tougher when the way the team is playing is so tied to your identity as a player, and then that identity has to change in order for the success to happen. And there's too much of just taking away of each other, and now it's more they're more complementary. That was a process, though. Remember, Terrence Mann was injured. He earned a starting job, then got hurt right before the season started. By the time he gets healthy, he's coming off the bench, and it's a completely different roster. And I don't think Terrence dealt with that particularly um, ideally. And who can blame him? Like, you're fighting for a job, you earn it, and then you come back. Besides whatever you got to deal with to get back physically, you're trying to fit in again to a team that is also as a whole trying to um, figure out what the best fits are for everybody. And I think that those are the changes that we don't really talk about. We always talk about the stars, but we don't talk about how it affects your rank and file. Your guys like Ivica Zubac, your guys like Norman Powell. Uh, that that has much to do with the guys fitting in and being able to be greater than the sum of their parts than anything else.
I think that's a story in Boston too. Al Horford going to the bench early on. My eyes were on that from the start because he never did in his whole career. I think 13 times in his whole career coming into this year came off the bench. And it was rocky at first. He definitely wasn't involved. The offensive numbers were pretty bad. But in December, 50 from the field, back up to 40 from three, 8 rebounds a game off the bench, along with 3 assists, 1 turnover. He's embraced that role. And turn this team, and Jason Tatum seems like he's going to play tomorrow, but they beat the Kings handily without Tatum last game. And another great story with the Celtics this year is how well they've played with uh, Tatum off the floor. And that was always a massive issue for this team going back to 2020 when he really became the guy. And this year, they're +6. I haven't checked it after the Kings game, but it has to be even higher per 100 with him off the floor. So this bench has been great. Horford figured it out how to come off the bench. You got your Peyton Pritchards and Sam Hauser's playing well there, and other guys deeper on the bench making some contributions lately. And that's been a big part of the Clippers' success too, it seems like, is Russell Westbrook embracing that bench role.
What's interesting about the Celtics to me is just like them dudes have no conscience. You already know what they're trying to do, man. They're trying to jack them threes,
Mm-hmm.
and it keeps certain things pretty damn simple. Like Joe Mazzulla is like, just so you guys know, we're gonna take threes, however they come, and that's it. Like, they are top heavy. They have a lot of talent. I don't think it's super complicated what Boston does. And you know what? Maybe that's an issue because the closer games get with the Celtics, the more the shakier they used to be. I think they are. I think they're maybe a little bit better than they started. I haven't gotten to. I mean, that's the exciting thing for me. Like, I get to see the Celtics up close instead of
Yep.
seeing, one of their many games against the Orlando Magic.
They've
I
played the
mean,
Knicks like 5 times, the Magic like 3. The schedule's been
right,
wacky this year with the tournament.
right. Like, it's been very fun and interesting in that regard. But it's like, look, the Celtics, the best chance you have beating them is if the shooting variance gives you a close game. Your worst case scenario is all those dudes are hitting, which was the case in Sacramento, and you're toast, and you ain't got to worry about playing in a close game anymore. You know, the Clippers are a little bit more like, I've seen so many different Clippers games, even in the win streak. Like, there are games where they're trailing and they need to go and put a cape on and rescue the game. They need to change the game up. There are games where they blow the lead. When they went to Dallas and 22-point lead smoked against a Dallas team that you knew it was Luka. Like, the Dallas Mavericks are one of the easiest teams in the league to deal with because you just know it's so Luka centric. Even when Kyrie plays, and Kyrie wasn't playing. Um, but the fun thing that Dallas did is they went small, which is a throwback Clippers move. And the Clippers, they're not good at going small, but all of a sudden they're like, you know what, we'll go small too. Without Paul George, mind you, like, the Clippers were shorthanded as well. And to like, I feel like the different matchups that you get across the league, brings out different versions of you. That's why I love the regular season. People love the value in the regular season, but it's like, no, like the regular season, you never know what's going to happen. And, that's going to add context to the playoffs. You understand what teams can do, what teams have struggled with. I think if you can do anything one time, I think there's a chance that you can repeat it. Whereas if you haven't done it, all that says is you haven't done it, and you need to keep an eye on when the breakthrough comes, if it ever comes. So um, this is going to be a great matchup, just for the simple fact that the way the Clippers are playing, the way the Celtics played, not just this year, but James has cited the Celtics as an example of a team that has been together and knows what they're doing for several years, which is a bit of a misnomer because you're mentioning Drew this year, Kristaps Porzingis. Like, this is the first time we've ever talked, and we're not talking about how the coach isn't a factor. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what these teams can bring out of each other Saturday.
Yeah, and it's been interesting too that this trip is coming together about the same time that it did a year ago, and it's when it went off the rails a little bit for Boston last year after that 21-5 start. Uh, Clippers just shut them down in LA just about a year ago this week, and
One
then
of the few serious performances we got from that team all season, mind you.
yeah, and it was crazy how that switching on the LA side just completely shut off what was red hot shooting by the Celtics to that point. And it's been shooting that's carried them a lot this year too. But as you mentioned, it's a different kind of team. And it was interesting to see the reaction to the Warriors loss a couple days ago. I think nationally it caught a lot of eyeballs because it was on TNT and it was one of those dramatic Celtics meltdowns that we've seen in recent years. And
Oh, I was
it looked
particularly annoyed.
it looked familiar, right? So I get why people got caught up in it a little bit, but you look at the clutch numbers, and I'm looking at the Clippers a little bit too. Here, the Celtics are 9-5 in clutch finishes this year, 2-2 without Porzingis, which is the problem. I
The
I think
reason
they
why the reason why it stands out is because how many games did the Celtics lost overall,
five,
right?
six at this point, right?
Yeah, like in other words, out of the 6 losses, all but one of them have been clutch time. That's
Yeah,
how, like, we say it because you're right. We're gonna hold them to a different and higher standard. The Celtics are basically unbeatable unless you can drag them into clutch time. Now, have they won their share of games? You damn right, because they are good. They're a good team. Remember, clutch time is pretty objective, meaning like you can be up by 10 and then you like let a team do a little
in
fake
five,
comeback at the
yeah.
end. Yeah, your latest special, and it's a clutch time game because they cut the lead down 5 in the last 10 seconds. No chance
Yeah.
to actually win a game, but all right, you won it. Congrats. Um, it's like, no, we're talking about Boston in the clutch because that's the only time they will ever lose. Period.
It's a it's a good point, right. So there's been a handful of those games that are fake close, those games that were close that shouldn't have been close, like the Memphis game where everybody was out. They squeezed it out by 2. So if you want to count that one as a loss, maybe you can. If if going down to the wire with the Raptors doesn't satisfy you and
No,
barely
if you
escaping that
win,
game,
no, winning games is that's it. I've learned this covering this team the last 3 years. Pretty much, when Kawhi was out with the ACL, and then last year when the team was just every one of those wins counted as far as staying out of the play-in, and then this year when this team literally had to recover from a 6-game losing streak the way that they did. Like, these are good teams in the NBA this year. And what's ironic about the Pistons being on a 25-game losing streak? They're going to
yeah.
get everybody's best shot because they don't want to be the team to like end that historic
They're
streak.
coming to
You know what I
Boston
mean?
Thursday to tie the record.
Yeah, I bet you damn well Boston Celtics going to be on top of their game. You don't like there is a level, and this goes back to James Harden's point last night that he spoke with me about. There is a level of appropriate fear, to borrow a Mark Dagnall term, when it comes to just when a team, especially when a team is struggling, right? These guys are all pros. Every team in the league, all 30 teams, they got rotations full of high level basketball players. And it's the responsibility of the collective and the coaches to ensure that all those guys are winning more often than not, that they're prepared to play, that they're going to remain competitive no matter what happens within a game, no matter what's happening on the way to meeting a certain team. So, like, when you barely beat a team that has lost 5 of the last 7 games, you still got to accept the damn win, man. Like, sometimes those are your most impressive wins, when you had to drag it out against a team that is desperate to beat you, and you know that everyone looks at the Celtics. The Celtics don't get nobody's worse. Like, the Celtics have been too good in the East. Superstars notice what the Celtics have done. Only thing Celtics haven't done is won a championship over the last, over this time where Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown have been together. That's literally the only thing, and they came 2 games short of that. So when you're a team like them in the regular season, it's easy maybe for those dudes to get bored. But who's not bored is the teams that they got to face. They're like, oh, the Celtics are here. We're going to come and we're going to absolutely try and make this a statement for us.
Yeah, and they've said that a lot, especially last year. I never loved hearing it. Might be true, but I never loved hearing it after those games. They thought that, oh, these teams don't play like this against the Pistons. They don't play like this against the, Magic or whoever it might be a year ago. I don't think they handled that well a year ago. I do think they've handled it well this year. And as you mentioned, I'm not expecting the Pistons to catch them off guard Thursday. They've handled business against the Pacers team that came in without Halliburton and dropped 155 on them. Handled business against the Wizards, teams like that. They've done a better job with that this year, which has kind of been my favorite part of this season, is not having those excruciating losses against teams like that. They do catch you off guard, as they did a year ago with this team. And in terms of the clutch, I do like your point that 5 of 6 in clutch time. That is a great point. Like, that's where they've lost, when they've lost this year, essentially. Like, they haven't gotten blown out by anybody, nor can they probably have that happen when their full lineup's intact anyway. So this year's
Yeah,
all been
like
about figuring
their
that
one
out.
blowout, their one blowout loss. I remember I was watching the game on that Friday afternoon, when they were playing the Magic, the in-season tournament game. They were up double digits in that game.
Yeah,
They,
from
in
like
other words,
14 to, yeah, whatever it was.
yeah, like, so look at it, right? They have been in every game. 27 games they played. 28th game will be Saturday at LA. They have been in every game. Every game, there's a portion of the game in the middle where they either were like, we won this game, or we had a chance to win this game.
It's a
That's
great point.
incredibly impressive. They are a powerful basketball team, and like, they got their point guard on like October 1st or something like that. They got Kristaps Porzingis right before the draft. The Clippers were very much involved in that transaction, which is going to be very interesting because the Clippers, they love seeing Kristaps Porzingis. Okay, so like, everyone's looked at the Celtics, man.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna get to, is they have been different with Porzingis, and he's missed 5 games at this point. That's the biggest difference I think you look at compared to a year ago. Because Smart was bringing a Holiday-esque impact, similar kind of impact. They're different players, but you had a loaded backcourt last year if you're Boston. You didn't have a center who could score inside and out as he can. And I've been blown away watching him this year. And it's going to be a challenge, I'd have to imagine, for the Clippers too, to handle those switches. He's dominating smaller players inside. I think he's still the best post-up player in the league, which is unimaginable when you look at his early career production in that area. And it's been a pleasant surprise, not only watching him this year, but covering him too. Like, he's just in his glory in Boston. He's so happy to be there. He's enjoying being on a winning
you'd
team.
be you'd be happy to be in with the team like that after what he's seen, especially post ACL. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the Knicks were not good. I mean, he was a different kind of player before the ACL, but like, they weren't good. Then he gets to
His game
Dallas, and
has
they were good.
changed. It's crazy.
You see how he's opening up more and more about how unhappy that time in Dallas was. Okay,
Yeah.
right down to the day he was traded. I was in Dallas the day he traded. I actually said hello to him, and then 10 minutes later, the
For Spencer
notification came.
Dinwiddie and Davis
Right,
Bertans.
that was your value. That was your value. Like
And I
Porzingis
remember the
represented.
Celtics, when they were kicking around trading Kemba, it was like, would you take on the Porzingis contract? You weren't even talking about bringing in Porzingis, the player. It was that huge
Exactly.
contract and bad deal for bad deal. And this is where he is all these years later.
Yeah, it's like that's when you've seen that, when you've been hurt, when you missed the playoffs, which is what was the case with the Wizards. And shit, he's only played 10 playoff games in his entire career.
Yeah.
Like
Got hurt in the
you're
bubble.
yeah, like yeah, you're going to you're going to play a little harder. That's just what it is.
So I want to shout out some sponsors here real quick before we wrap it up with a little more Clippers talk here with Law Murray. Of course, you can check out all his work at The Athletic. Go subscribe over there and follow him on Twitter for the game tomorrow, which is coming early, very early on the West Coast. 3 o'clock tomorrow. We'll have coverage of that as well here after the game. He's at Law Murray, the NU on Twitter. And we are brought to you by FanDuel. Check out FanDuel right now for $150 in bonus bets when you make a winning $5 moneyline bet. That's at FanDuel.com/Boston right now. Basketball Christmas. Go over there. That's your spot for all the lines and basketball games, football this weekend as well. Great time to make a money line bet and get $150 in bonus bets when you head over there. Our official sports wagering partner, CLNS Media, The Garden Report, Dome Theory, and all the rest. FanDuel. Make every moment more with them. Of course, 21 plus present and mass for this offer. And your first online real money wager, only $5 money line wager required. And the bets are non-withdrawable and expire after 7 days. HelloFresh, making your winter a little bit easier. Love using them. Lay down instructions, prepackaged ingredients, all the rest, and they're going to throw in free breakfast for life right now at HelloFresh.com/CLNS free. Every time you get it, you'll get some free breakfast items in your box, and it just makes the cooking experience so much easier, so much more smooth. Even if you're someone who doesn't love to cook, you're going to avoid the grocery lines, going to avoid those going out to eat prices right now. So check them out, HelloFresh.com/CLNS free. And get $20 off at SeatGeek right now, Dreamers Pro. Just use that promo code Dreamers Pro. Great app. Concerts, games, whatever you're trying to go to this time. Celtics back in town next week as well for a few games against the Pistons and Raptors. Go to SeatGeek to find those tickets and whatever else you're trying to go to. Dreamers Pro for $20 off your first order. We're going to hit on it, but Russ on the bench. How does that work? Because it didn't really work with the Lakers, but it seems to be working here. And that seems to be the turning point in this season after they made that change. You mentioned the man dynamic in it. But for Russ off the bench, what's working there?
Well, you got to remember the Lakers didn't want Russ, so
Yeah,
you
I mean,
know,
they did when they did the deal and then quickly
yeah. By the
decided
time
no.
Russ was coming off the bench, I mean, Darvin tried to make it work, and I'm not going to say what it was like with that locker room. I wasn't really in that locker room like that, but I know that there was a significant player that didn't want Russ after a certain point. I think that makes it hard to play. That's just
Mm-hmm.
me. So I think whatever the circumstances are here with the Clippers, Russ is around guys who want Russ to be there. That helps a lot. He's with a coach that wants him to be there. That helps a lot. And the other factor with the Lakers that is not as much of a factor with the Clippers is the Clippers are capable of putting more lineups on the floor that actually make sense. Like Russ wasn't always the point guard in those lineups in with the Lakers, and naturally, when you're playing with LeBron, LeBron ain't as willing to get off the ball. So you got LeBron, or you got three other guards that you're sharing the floor with. Take your pick. That's not the case with the Clippers. So when Russ is not playing as much, that's a big thing. Like Russ's minutes have nosedived, but when Russ is on the floor, He's motivated to do two things: make plays and defend at a high level. His energy is you're getting 20 minutes of Russell Westbrook energy. And I don't really want to keep saying that the bench is goes because of Russ. Like Russ is the loudest part of it, and Russ is playing his role. But to say Russ before saying Norman Powell and his impacts, which has been consistent over this season and the season before.
Keeping him was huge in that Harden deal.
And that was the most surprising part of the deal. I thought Norm, and I feel kind of bad about this because, I hit up Norm the night that it happened. And I was like, yo, what's up? And I thought that James and Norm were going to kind of overstep each other. And that was kind of the case, to be honest with you, because T. Lue tried to keep Russ as the point guard while having James be off the ball. And if you're going to look at James as an off ball piece, then yeah, like James and Norm are kind of similar outside of the fact that James is capable as a passer in ways that Norm has never been. But now that you streamline the depth chart and guys understand where their roles are, James Harden is a point guard now. And you really need Norman Powell because as good as Terrence Mann is as a fifth guy, as a guy who completes a very strong starting lineup, when you need buckets, when you need a little bit more confident shooting and spacing, Norm has filled that role very well with the first unit. So as a second unit guy, he's capable of outscoring entire benches by himself. Hasn't happened as many times this year, but the Clippers roster is better this year than it was last year. So Norm has that ability, but then in the first unit, Norm has been a really good fit with James and Kawhi and Paul and Ivica Zubac because unlike Terrence, Norm has shot incredibly well this year. And that's your bench. Daniel Tice, Celtics friend multiple times over. He has really helped, and I'm very interested to see what happens with the backup center position in LA when Mason Plumlee gets his health back. I think that Mason Plumlee has an outside chance to play before this month is over. There's only 3 games left this month, so we got to see. But Daniel has helped his cause because he's a smart player, a high floor player as far as he doesn't make a ton of mistakes. Daniel does have limitations that are glaring. Like he's a 6'8" guy, he's not very explosive.
Don't you love when he shoots the corner three?
Well, that is the biggest swing factor Daniel has. The biggest advantage Daniel Tice has to keeping minutes is shooting the basketball. Like he has to shoot that three because when he makes those threes, it gives the second unit a look that none of the other centers are capable of fulfilling. Zubac is a non-threat outside of the paint, and he can be turnover prone the more he touches the ball, which is tough to see because Zoo is incredibly good at finishing, especially outside of the restricted area in the paint. Like his hooks, his footwork, his ability to mash, especially smaller centers, is top notch. So Bazoo's not a threat, outside the paint at all, unless he's screening for somebody. And then Mason Plumlee, Mason's a better passer, and Mason is a really good finisher above the rim. But Mason Plumlee obviously is not a threat to score outside of the paint. Daniel, what differentiates him, and that's what you have to consider when building a roster. It's something that was an issue for the Clippers before Mason's injury, and it made it glaring when Mason was hurt. There was an interim period. All those losses that James had to start his tenure with the Clippers, they did not have a backup center finish the game. Mason Plumlee got hurt in that first game in New York. Daniel has completed and complemented this roster. But like that's the key to the bench is that they just have guys that make sense in the lineups. Whereas that doesn't always happen with some of these teams.
Yeah, and that's been so refreshing with them. I love watching those, Plumlee when he first arrived and then Tice since, and Celtics fans obviously still love Tice to this day. Most of them, I'd say, in terms of what he did here and what he's doing now and the, championship with Germany that everybody saw over the summer. He's had a nice career in the NBA now, and it continues here with another good team. So I think everyone's going to be excited to see him play tomorrow. Last one I got for you here. I want to kind of hit all the stars at once here, so I'll ask it like this.
Yeah.
In 2024, what supporting cast aside, and both these teams have pretty good supporting casts, but which duo is better positioned to win a championship just with where they are in their careers at this point? Brown and Tatum or George and Kawhi?
I mean, I gotta say Brown and Tatum, like those dudes have made deep runs together. So
Yeah.
like we arguably they should have won a championship already. They were in the finals with a lead. We haven't seen that from Paul and Kawhi yet. We're hoping to see it this year because it might be their last chance.
Just
So
because
just
of
in
the
terms of,
availability
I mean,
or
availability
even
is
just
one.
what they bring? Yeah.
Availability is one thing, but it's like it's just the timeline, man. Like you know, the thing that the Celtics and I feel like they appreciate it. You never know with Boston media, but like we like am I capping or not? Like
No,
if
no,
you can
no.
let me
You're
know,
you're
you there.
100% right.
Yeah, it's like come on, man. Like Jason Tatum is 25 years old. Like Jalen Brown is 27, like a little bit older. Like when Kawhi and Paul were those at that age, is like look at where those guys were. You know what I mean? Like they're not there anymore. And so you can't take for granted what you have with two guys with so many years left and with a track record of success. Like we're literally talking about the only thing they have not done is win it all. Like if you put Jason and Jalen in this time of their career and say they never played with each other before and then they became Celtics next year, it would still have more time in their timeline with healthier bodies, mind you, than when Paul and Kawhi got to LA. So health is a big part of it for the Clippers. We all know that, and they're really good together, and they're really motivated to win. So they have a lot going on. It's no slight to Paul and Kawhi at all. It's just they're still waiting to do a lot of the things that Jason and Jalen have already done while being significantly older than the both of those guys.
Despite that, are you seeing shades of the old Kawhi this year? Because the numbers are amazing.
The numbers are amazing, and I mean, I think he's even better. Like Kawhi is more dialed in defensively than he's been in a long time. And a lot of that is situational defense, like having a guy like Terrence start games so that when you do need to switch Kawhi onto someone else, Kawhi is ready to go. Having James Harden, Lawrence Frank, I give Lawrence a lot of credit for, his willingness to make certain moves. He should get a lot of credit also for listening to his coach and his stars when they go against what Lawrence probably would do if he was left to his own, autonomy. So James Harden is the point guard that Kawhi and Paul have always preferred to play with. It's just a matter of can Kawhi and Paul play the point guard role in a positionless offense where you just fill the other three spots with shooters and defenders that kind of raise your floor? Sure. But that wears those dudes down, And having a guy like James makes it so that Kawhi can focus his energy on two things getting buckets and shutting down bucket getters on the other end of the floor. That's why he's playing better, It's about complementary basketball. So he's been healthy Thursday night aside. Hopefully, he can play Saturday. And one of the reasons he has been at his best is because he's on a team that supports it.
I love that we might see these two teams head to head, fully loaded. In recent years, that hasn't been a given, and this could be a special one. Saturday, 3:00. I hope the LA thing doesn't bite the Celtics either. The LA 2 days off
Nightlife. You never know.
at 3:00 too,
And
tipping
it's
off. That doesn't
Christmas.
help.
And it's Christmas, man. Nah, I have no sympathy for the game time for the visiting team. I've watched the Clippers play just batshit crazy basketball in matinee games, for lack of a better term. I never know what I'm going to get from that team on a quarter to quarter basis, especially in matinee games. Everyone knows it. The fans know it. The head coach knows it. The stars know it. The role players know it. And even James Harden knows it now because he's been a part of these games. So
I hope they went out last night, Thursday. Friday, take it easy. Give
Yeah,
yourself the full day, baby.
yeah,
He's
we'll
Law
see,
Murray.
man.
Always enjoy talking to him. Always appreciate him giving us some time here. Check him out at The Athletic and on Twitter as well. Thanks as always, Law, and we'll talk to you again here soon.